The world was stunned when SeaWorld trainer Dawn Brancheau was killed by the Orca Tilikum, an unthinkable end to a trusted bond. And the truth is even darker than it seems.
In 2010, trainer Dawn Brancheau died when the whale pulled her under and she drowned.
Dawn Brancheau was not just a trainer. She was the face of SeaWorld Orlando, a symbol of grace, experience, and devotion. With over 15 years at the park, she had risen through the ranks, becoming one of the most respected professionals in the field. Guests would often stay after shows just to catch a glimpse of her. Her calm presence, athleticism, and deep bond with the whales made her stand out, especially in her work with Tilikum, the park's largest and most controversial orca. But before he became a performer, Tilikum was something else entirely. Tilikum had been taken from the wild as a calf off the coast of Iceland in 1983. He was just 2 years old when he was separated from his pod, his mother's calls echoing through the water as boats drove the group into shallow nets. He was chosen, sold, and flown across the world. At Sealand of the Pacific in Canada, Tilikum was confined to a small, dark tank with 2 older females. He was often raked, bullied, and isolated. The tank was so small that trainers had to keep him in a holding module, a dark steel enclosure barely larger than his body, for hours at a time. He lived in tanks far too small for an animal of his size. They were denied the rich social structures of orca pods and spent years performing choreographed routines under bright lights and loud music. The stress of captivity chipped away at him until what remained was a broken version of a creature meant for the open ocean. Despite this, SeaWorld kept him in rotation, not just as a performer, but as a breeding machine. But Tilikum was no ordinary whale. Weighing over 12,000 pounds and stretching 22 feet long, he carried with him a history of aggression and a reputation that made even seasoned trainers uneasy. He had already been involved in 2 deaths before Dawn's. In 1991, Sealand trainer Kelty Byrne slipped into the pool. Tilikum and the others dragged her under repeatedly. She drowned in front of guests and staff. In 1999, a man was found dead, draped over Tilikum's back at SeaWorld, having allegedly snuck into the tank overnight. Still, Tilikum remained in shows, not for water work, but for dry interactions, feeding, hand signals, no swimming. These limited routines were seen as a compromise between safety and spectacle, and the red flags kept coming. Tilikum would ignore cues, refuse food, float listlessly for hours. He sometimes refused to separate from gates or took longer to respond to basic signals. He was known for his unpredictability, but he was also SeaWorld's most valuable asset. So the shows continued. If you're into real stories that uncover the truth behind the headlines, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications. We drop deep dives like this every week. On February 24th, 2010, it was the Dine with Shamu event. Guests sat just feet from the pool, enjoying lunch while trainers demonstrated whale behaviors. Dawn was on the platform, engaging Tilikum as she had done countless times before. He responded to cues, accepted fish, and swam in slow, controlled circles. But subtle cues were missed. He didn't line up properly for one behavior, drifted sideways at another. Small deviations, easy to overlook, easy to dismiss. Still, the show went on. Then, without warning, Tilikum lunged, grabbing Dawn by the ponytail, or maybe her arm, and in an instant, everything changed. Panic erupted. Guests screamed, alarms blared, trainers rushed into action, but Tilikum was already beneath the surface, Dawn trapped in his jaws. What followed was a horrifying 40-minute ordeal. Again and again he surfaced, only to drag her under. Again and again she tried to escape, to breathe, to survive. But he wouldn't let go. The audience could do nothing but watch. Tilikum's power was overwhelming. He ruled the pool. The outcome was already written.
She sat down with her supervisor and they listed the incident on the incident report, that incident report never made it into the incident log.
Trainers rushed in, alarms rang out. Bystanders were ushered away. Laura Surovic, SeaWorld's assistant curator and a close friend of Dawn, was among the first to arrive. In police reports, she described the scene. Tilikum treated Brancheau's body as his possession. They tried emergency recall signals to move Tilikum away, but he wouldn't budge. He swam back and forth, circling Dawn and keeping everyone at bay. Staff stood ready with stretchers, oxygen tanks, defibrillators, but no one could enter the water. The whale refused to release her. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Laura, mere feet from the pool, could do nothing but watch. Dawn's body was unrecognizable. Her scalp had been torn away, her jaw fractured, one of her arms severed. Tilikum remained possessive, circling her body, holding her as if he still wasn't ready to let her go. Trainers deployed nets, tossed food, gave every signal they knew. But it took a painfully long time to retrieve her, and by the time they did, it was already over. The official autopsy was devastating. Drowning, yes, but also massive blunt force trauma. Her ribs and sternum were crushed, her spine fractured, her liver was torn. These were the kinds of injuries seen in high-speed car crashes, not marine parks. But this wasn't a freak accident. It was the predictable result of years of overlooked warnings. After Dawn's death, SeaWorld scrambled to protect its image. Initial statements hinted at trainer error, that she had gotten too close or broken protocol. Some blamed her ponytail, but those who knew her knew the truth. Dawn was meticulous. She followed the rules. If she was with Tilikum that day, it was because SeaWorld authorized it. The system had failed her.
SeaWorld has manipulated the investigation, and we want an impartial agency to come in and investigate properly.
News outlets ran headlines around the clock. Footage circulated, questions mounted. And then came Blackfish. The 2013 documentary shattered the image SeaWorld had spent decades creating. Through raw interviews and leaked documents, the truth was undeniable. Tilikum wasn't a monster. He was broken, a product of captivity. And SeaWorld paid the price. Attendance plummeted, stocks fell, public trust collapsed. If this story hit you hard, like, share, and subscribe to help more people see the truth behind the tanks. These stories deserve to be heard. They ended the orca breeding, phased out theatrical shows, promised change. But for Dawn and Tilikum, it was too late. Tilikum spent his final years alone, circling the same tank, day after day, until he died in 2017. No freedom, no pod, just silence. To many, he had died long before his body gave out. Dawn Brancheau wasn't reckless. She was SeaWorld's best. But even the most experienced hands can't hold back the weight of a broken system. Her death and Alexis Martinez's before hers weren't freak accidents. They were warnings, ignored until it was too late. This wasn't just about one whale or one woman. It was about captivity and the silence that let it continue. How many more lives, human or animal, must be lost before we finally admit that these creatures were never meant to live in tanks?